Did you know, in 18th century London, thousands of aristocrats wore masks specifically so they could commit adultery, pickpockets, and destroy political careers, all in the same room, all in one night? The Georgian masquerade ball wasn't some charming costume party. It was a powder keg of sex, crime, and social warfare dressed in silk. But there's one detail about who actually controlled these events that changes everything you think you know about power in the 1700s. And the reason the British establishment tried to burn the whole tradition to the ground? That part is darker than you'd expect. Right now, millions of people are obsessed with Bridgerton, with Regency romance, with the fantasy of elegant ballrooms and witty courtship. But the real 18th century makes Bridgerton look like a children's tea party. According to History Extra, BBC, historian Megan Kobza has pulled back the curtain on what actually happened inside these masked events. And the key players include kings, con artists, sex workers, and one Swiss impresario who turned chaos into a business empire. None of that was the real problem. The number that stopped me cold is coming up. To understand why masquerade balls terrified the British ruling class, you need to understand what a mask actually did in Georgian society. England in the 1700s was rigidly hierarchical. You dressed according to your station. You spoke according to your station. Your body, your clothes, your very posture advertised exactly who you were and what you were worth. Now imagine a room where all of that vanishes. A mask and a costume turned a duchess into a nobody and a nobody into a duchess. Servants rubbed shoulders with lords, prostitutes flirted with bishops, and nobody could be entirely sure who was who. That was the point. The masquerade was the one space in Georgian England where the social order completely collapsed, and that made it intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. The first major public masquerades in London exploded onto the scene in the early 1700s, and they drew enormous crowds. We're talking over 1,000 attendees crammed into venues like the Haymarket Theatre, paying serious money for entry. By the way, if this kind of story is useful to you, hit like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Now, the man who industrialized this madness was a Swiss-born entrepreneur named John James Heidegger. Remember that name. What I am about to show you is the part most people are missing. Heidegger was, by most accounts, spectacularly ugly. Contemporaries called him the ugliest man in England, and he leaned into it. He turned his own notoriety into a brand. He organized the most lavish, most scandalous public masquerades London had ever seen, and he did it under the direct patronage of King George II. Think about what that means. The crown itself was backing these events. Heidegger became master of the revels, essentially the official party planner for the monarchy, and he used that position to create spectacles that were equal parts carnival and chaos. But here's where it gets genuinely dark. The anonymity of the mask didn't just enable flirtation. It enabled assault. It enabled theft. It enabled political entrapment. Women of high social standing reported being groped, propositioned, and followed by men who knew they could never be identified. Men used costumes to impersonate rivals and spread false rumors. There are documented cases of husbands and wives attending the same masquerade, each pursuing separate affairs, neither recognizing the other. The morality campaigners of the era, pamphleteers, clergymen, satirists like Henry Fielding, went absolutely berserk. They called masquerades nurseries of vice, temples of debauchery. Fielding wrote an entire mock treatise attacking Heidegger personally, calling him a threat to the nation's moral fabric. And yet, the balls kept growing. The elite kept attending. The money kept flowing. Stay with me. The last part is what actually matters. Here's the detail that reframes everything. The people who held the most power at these masquerades, the ones who manipulated, who schemed, who used the mask most effectively, were overwhelmingly women. In a society that gave women almost no public agency, the masquerade was a rare arena where a woman could approach a man, speak freely, make the first move, control the conversation, and disappear without consequence. Women use masquerades to conduct affairs that would have ruined them in daylight. They used them to gather intelligence on rivals. They used them to audition potential husbands without the suffocating supervision of chaperones. Some women dressed as men, not as a joke, but as a deliberate power play, adopting male freedom of movement for a single electric night. This is why the moralists were truly terrified. It wasn't just about sex, it was about women tasting autonomy. The masquerade didn't just bend the rules of class, it bent the rules of gender. And once people experienced that freedom, they didn't want to give it back. That is the real reason the establishment tried to shut it all down. Not crime, not theft, not even adultery. It was the ungovernable threat of women who had learned, even for one night, what it felt like to move through the world without permission. Before I go, here is your historical footnote of the day. Speaking of dangerous disguises, in 1651, the future King Charles II fled England after losing the Battle of Worcester by disguising himself as a servant named Will Jackson. He cut his hair, darkened his skin with walnut juice, and spent 6 weeks hiding in plain sight, sleeping in barns and priest holes, while parliamentary soldiers hunted him with a physical description circulated to every town in the country. One innkeeper reportedly stared directly at his face, recognized him, and said nothing. Charles later rewarded that silence with a pension. A mask doesn't have to be made of silk. Sometimes survival depends on becoming someone else entirely. That is your footnote for today. If Georgian masked balls taught us anything, it's that the moment people can hide who they are, they reveal what they actually want. Subscribe to Weird History. I cover this every single day. See you tomorrow.